Right now, there's no reason to believe the Dolphins will have their starters rolling in Detroit. So, what should we be looking for in Miami's second preseason contest? I'm glad you asked.
You are Locked On Dolphins, your daily Miami Dolphins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Miami, welcome to another episode of Locked On Dolphins. It is your team every day here on the Locked On Network. I'm your host, Kyle Krabs, a lifelong Miami Dolphins fan, host of Locked On Dolphins, co-host of Locked On NFL Scouting, author of Touchdown Miami on Substack, NFL staff writer for A to Z Sports. Want to give a special welcome and shout out to our everydayers because it is your team every day. We don't just say it, we live it here on the Locked On Network. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. Mike McDaniel, ahead of Thursday's practice, indicated that as of right now, that being Thursday morning, before the Dolphins had a much better practice than what they had on Wednesday. Now, did they win? What was the score? Neither here nor there. And the bits kind of played itself out. So we're not going to get into what the spread was for the off day today. Mike McDaniel said this: as of right now, this being before Thursday's practice, I'm not planning on playing the ones in the game. This practice does participate in the overall final assessment that I'll make with the coaching staff tomorrow, that being today. But as of right now, went into this practice planning for the ones to not play, said Mike McDaniel. And based off what was a better day of execution and a couple of physical practices, I would be inclined to think the Dolphins probably will not be rolling the ones out, which makes kind of the search for the right storylines to anticipate who's dressing and who's not. And the important questions to ask, it makes it a little bit more complicated because you're not looking at potentially up to a 15-play script for the starters like we got last week against Chicago, right? So I have a few areas of this roster that there's a few different ways this could play and break out that I'm really intrigued to see what it looks like. So when Mike McDaniel says, I'm not going to play the ones, what about the cornerback position, right? Like, do we have any ones right now at the cornerback? Is it, we've talked about legitimate competition, wide open competition. Storm Duck seems like he's in the driver's seat, but then you've got Ethan Bonner played well last week in the preseason game. I thought Jason Marshall looked good in the preseason game, appears to be somebody who's kind of incrementally working his way up. Jack Jones did not have an enjoyable time trying to execute the Dolphins' ask of playing on an island against Amon-Ra St. Brown this week, but he did get elevated looks at the expense of Kendall Sheffield as far as working with what you perceive to be the ones. So how do you split these guys? What opportunities do these guys get to play with familiar faces or potentially elevate, like Jason Marshall? He played like the last half dozen or 16, almost 2 dozen snaps of the game against Chicago. How early does he get in the game? Does he get in there with the group that has Mike Hilton playing, or is he still playing with a lot of your UDFAs in the secondary that are all trying to incentivize making the roster, really? That's the part that's interesting to me. And from Storm Duck's perspective, had a nice break on a ball against Detroit on Thursday in practice. That's nice progress because as much as you've heard the praise for the football smarts and the technique and fundamentals, there haven't really been a lot of splash plays from Storm. So to see him break on the ball and almost have an interception is the kind of incremental progress from a results perspective that can affirm that your process is doing the right things, to kind of tie together what the theme of the last couple of days has been versus process versus results. So to get that positive reinforcement with a good result, hey, we'll take it. But he seems far and away like the one that they really like the best and they feel comfortable with as an outside corner. They were invested in him last year. He was getting looks before Kader Kohou goes down. So I'm really interested in, does Kohou or does Storm Duck get reps, despite the ones, air quotes, not getting reps or not planning to get reps. Those are some of the names that I am soft circling like a Storm Duck. If it were me, Storm would still get reps because Storm is still green enough that I think Storm would greatly benefit from additional reps. And let's be honest, if Storm Duck goes down, what does the outlook look like for your secondary that's any different than what it looks like right now, right? Because you don't really know what you have in Storm Duck from a concrete evidence perspective based on anything than 300 snaps as an undrafted rookie last year. And if Storm Duck's the injury that is the straw that breaks the camel's back for the Dolphins defense, you have bigger problems in the first place. So I would play Storm Duck. I hope he plays. I'm pulling for him to play because that would be a early game storyline that I'm looking to watch beyond the bubble players, right? So I think that is first and foremost as that being a wide open competition, a group that I'm really intrigued by. And the names that I mentioned, Ethan Bonner, Jason Marshall, are the ones that I'm most intrigued by based off of how they played their game against Chicago, hoping for elevated opportunities with better players around them. And that could also be relevant for like a Quinn Ewers, right? Ewers. I know there's different enunciations. I don't know if it's just my dialect growing up. But Quinn, the stat sheet was ugly. The film was better than the stat sheet, but still very up and down, which you'd expect from a 7th-round rookie, right? But I would love to see Quinn getting some opportunity to throw to guys that are competing to make the 53, not guys that are trying to inspire the Dolphins to offer them a practice squad slot or have a guaranteed practice squad slot because the Dolphins guaranteed them the financial equivalence of a year's worth of practice squad salary, like the Theo Weises and the Andrew Armstrongs of the world. Will we get a chance to see Quinn throwing to Eric Ezukanma, throwing to Dee Eskridge, throwing to Tahj Washington? I would love to see an overlap of those players to maybe give you a better snapshot for Quinn individually for how he can execute the offense. These are the kinds of things that it's like, okay, the ones aren't going. We're not going to get that evaluation opportunity on the film. That's a bummer. But at the same time, these are the kinds of now storylines that I'm really dialed on because they can really give you clarity on some of these young guys if you get them working with an elevated unit in some way, shape, or form. And whether or not that means Quinn should be in the conversation for QB2, hey, I'm not worried about that right now. I want to see what translates from the traits that he has when you have guys that have a better feel for how to run the offense. That's what I'm interested in. Speaking of that wide receiver battle royale, I want to get a little bit into that group next here on Locked on Dolphins. So make sure you guys stick with us. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. It's no good. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that helps bring your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, and get smart categorization of your spending so you can finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off of your first year. That's 50% off of your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. The wide receiver battle, I think, is the best way to put it. And every time you feel like there's some separation, one of these guys makes a play. Like it was Dee Eskridge with the, was he inbounds, but the Lions say he's out of bounds, but behind the pylon, there's a dispute on his, looks like his one. He made a great catch over DJ Reed. Can we agree it was a great catch, whether or not the feet were down inbounds or not? But the Dolphins, with this logjam, there's no way they keep 7, right? Just the numbers I don't think are going to work out remotely close to carrying 7 wide receivers unless they go super light on tight ends and they punt on Darren Waller and they carry 3 running backs plus a fullback. because they're going to have to carry 3 quarterbacks and maybe they go light on offensive line. I just don't see the numbers for keeping Waddle, Hill, Washington, Westbrook-Ikhine, which I think should be considered your 4 locks for the roster. And then Eskridge, Washington, and Ezukanma's not going away quietly into the night. Now, your appeals for Eric, I think, are physicality, blocking skills. He's like Westbrook-Ikhine, best at the vertical plane stuff, going all the way back to when he played at Texas Tech. He's not an overly refined route runner. Dee Eskridge has the return resume, is a little bit more shifty, is a pretty good route runner, but not as explosive, I think, as what you would want to be a marquee option in your passing game. And then you have Tahj Washington, who probably is the best twitch athlete of this trio of players, but the most unproven. And that's where, and he's the smallest. You already have size concerns in the wide receiver room, so that's a knock against Tahj. But you really could use like a man beater slot, get buckets against nickel coverage and win quickly and within the timing and the construct of the play. And Tahj is probably best at that. And Dee's got the return appeal where maybe you keep your better players off of your return game if you don't want to put them back there. But he's been the player that's kind of gone through the path of being an NFL player and has had the most opportunities and hasn't left. And he keeps flashing. Do you buy the flashes that this is the year it's finally going to click? And kind of the same thing for Ezukanma, but at least he has a different body type. Like, it's a very difficult conversation for me to parse through these 3 names and decide, hey, if you were only going to keep one of them, who do you keep? Predictively, I would put the pecking order at Eskridge, Washington, and Ezukanma right now. But that's why you've got a preseason game on Saturday. You got 1 joint practice against Jacksonville. Then you have the preseason game against Jacksonville. 3 more major evaluation opportunities for this trio of players to claim the top spot in the pecking order for wide receiver 5, and then for somebody else to make it undeniable that they have to be on the 53. If Tahj Washington gives you similar flashes against Jacksonville, in the preseason game, in the joint practice, and in the game against Detroit, that for me would qualify as being undeniable. I would want to carry this guy as a guy on a rookie contract who you drafted, who can be potentially the man beater that you're looking for. And there were a few times when Zach Wilson got in the game, he ran a deeper out to the field and snapped it off at the top of the route and had separation. And if a throw is made with anticipation and timing to put the body on the break on that deep out, he had another chunk play waiting for him. It just, the ball didn't get there. And I think Zach got flushed off his spot. I think that was the play he ran for 8 yards when they got backed up. And for Eric, I think you have to have the splash in the passing game. Or alternatively, you have to do what Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is doing with the second unit. And then you also have to make your special teams impact undeniable. It's a nasty group to try to sort out because I think there's appeal, but questions and limits with all 3 guys. So seeing them play it out will be interesting to me. I'm also interested, just speaking of skill players, pretty safe to assume Devon Achane won't play. We're not dressing the ones, or at least that's the expectation that Mike McDaniel had before Thursday's practice, which was considered progress from what Wednesday's practice was. You're light on backs, but then you've got 2 new ones in Shamplin and Mike Boone. Ollie Gordon's kind of the middleman. Jalen Wright also goes into this bucket a little bit. How much does Jalen Wright play? Jalen Wright for me is kind of like a Storm Duck, where projected as a valuable role, but could probably use the reps. would probably benefit from some of the reps. Ollie Gordon's a little bit more the bridge, but now he's become your best short yardage player unless you get somebody off waivers once you go to 53 cuts. So how much do you want these two guys to play in this game when it's a development opportunity versus we don't want to put extra wear and tear on guys that we feel really good are going to make the 53 and may have important roles to play within that room in the 53? I would probably go lighter on Jalen Wright. I would probably let Ollie have the first half from like a pass pro perspective, from a early down runs perspective. Ollie would be the one that I think would get more run, and then Boone and Shamklin, I think I would give the second half and say, okay, you guys out here, you signed this week, make the best of it, see what you can do. Right? Your expectations got to be tempered when those guys are in the game from a run game perspective. Maybe somebody comes in and Mike Boone's got some familiarity, maybe runs really well. Would I bet on it? No. But I would let Jalen Wright get maybe a couple possessions, and then Ollie, for me, would have the bulk of the first half. But that's just me. We're going to talk about the defensive line and then also finish with one of Miami's projected ones, the offensive line. That's next here on Locked On Dolphins. Make sure you guys stick with us. Today's episode of Locked On Dolphins is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience unlike any before. We are on Locked On Dolphins. We're playing on Yahoo. And you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran, making your millionth league to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness. Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days in the month of August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play Yahoo Fantasy, where the lowest scoring team each week is eliminated until there's just one team left standing. With the season now around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing your fantasy football now at yahoofantasy.com/lockedonnfl. The defensive line, for me, it was about 30-minute video on Jordan Phillips and his reps yesterday over on Touchdown Miami. Looked at his play. Got really excited. Disproportionately excited for a nose tackle. I'll say that. But we've talked since Austin Clark talked, the defensive line coach, not that long ago, about having 9 guys who could play. Do I see now 9 guys on the interior defensive line who will be on the 53? No, of course not. Do I see 6 that have a really good case? Yes, I do. Are they going to carry 6? Maybe, but probably not. And whoever the 7th is somebody that could be on a 53 somewhere else. I think Alex Huntley, UDFA, pretty safe to project to the practice squad if he's going to be here unless somebody offers him a 53, which I don't think they will. Between Ben Stille and Matthew Butler, I think those guys right now are your 7 and 8. And Butler's been on a 53. Stille's been on a 53. It's the 3 rookies, Matt Dickerson, Benito Jones, Zach Sealer, for me, is the 6. And it's the same outlook as the wide receivers. Whoever is that 6th guy is going to have to make it undeniable that they need to be on the 53. Whether that's Dickerson as kind of discount bargain bin Zach Sealer for like the role, but without the pass rush refinement, but can play in the same alignment with a similar body type. And they got their hands on last year and seem to feel like there's something there to work with. And Austin Clark was very complimentary of what his early down role could look like. And he made some nice plays against Chicago. Zeke Biggers is, I think the tools here are off the charts. It's like if Raekwon Davis was naturally as big as he was when he bulked up and was more explosive, but more raw and didn't play at Alabama. Like, that's how I view Zeke Biggers, where he bulked up, but he bulked up and wasn't dynamic. Biggers is that kind of length. He's that kind of density, but he's twitchy and he can like elevate and create a big presence on the inside on special teams for blocking kicks. And he had a couple of really textbook fits with surprisingly low pad level that was not what he put on tape when he was playing in the A gaps. Phillips, safe. Grant, safe. Benito Jones, safe. Zach Sealer. I would expect you're going to get a heavy dose of Dickerson and Phillips with Biggers, Butler, Stille, Huntley. Maybe you get a cameo appearance from Kenneth Grant. I feel a little less inclined to force Kenneth to play from like a, well, he really needs the reps perspective. I thought he had a strong showing, and I would be totally fine if they decided, hey, not this week, Ken. But if they rolled him out there, I also wouldn't bat an eye to say, hey, you're a rookie. Like, we need the development exposures, and we want you to have this, and we want you to have another rep of getting ready to play a game in a game week and prep on game day and all that kind of stuff. So you could flip a coin for Kenneth Grant, for me personally. But it's that battle with Dickerson, Biggers, Stille, and Butler, where I think you'll get at best 2 out of the 4. If I had to pick right now, it would be Biggers and Dickerson, but I haven't done the math yet to sit down and kind of parse through, okay, we're talking about maybe 6 wide receivers, 6 interior defensive linemen. Who's left elsewhere? I haven't done that process yet. I'm planning on doing that next week after we get the second preseason game to kind of get into, hey, here's a week out from cuts. Here's what I'm thinking. Speaking of the defensive line, let Derek McLendon play the whole damn game, as far as I'm concerned. It wasn't perfect, but it was dynamic. It was disruptive. It was very different from what the Dolphins had last year with like their depth edge guys, which is a really nice change of pace because, you know, once Phillips went down and Chubb wasn't playing, it was Chop and it was Tyus Bowser, who didn't have the burst that he had left and was never a super long or refined pass rusher. It was Emmanuel Agba, who was a slow burn kind of pass rusher on the edge. It was more of a power player. It was Quentin Bell, who's twitchy, but is pretty linear with where he went. I mean, McLendon was like water, right? Just flows through free access and finding spaces and carrying speed. It was a lot of fun, that tape. Now, point of attack work as a run defender, continued work in progress. Let him play the whole game. And letting him play the whole game for me is less about, hey, I don't think you should be on the 53. Like, I don't care if you get hurt, or I don't care if you're overtaxed from a workload perspective or anything. I really want to know, like, what the ceiling and the floor is with Derek McLendon. And because there's not a proof of concept at the NFL level from a reps perspective, I just want all the reps I can get. And then in a perfect world, maybe if you do overtax him in the preseason and he does make the 53 as your 5th edge behind Chubb and Phillips and Chop and Quentin Bell, and if McLendon beats out Cam Good, Muhammad Kamara, and Grayson Murphy for the 5th edge spot, that can be a inactive on game day stash for you for a few weeks at a minimum, and then he can get fresh legs again. So let McLendon play the whole game. That brings us to one other talking point that I had. And there's been a few guys, whether it was Kenneth Grant or Storm Duck, guys who Jalen Wright, guys that have big roles to play that I would still want to play, even if you're quote unquote sitting the ones. I think Jonah Savaiinaea needs to not only dress, I think he needs the reps, and he would greatly benefit from a bounce back. Because I did not think that Jonah played a consistent game. You saw the impact, you saw the physicality, you saw the athleticism, but the consistency of it was very up and down, in my opinion. And the nice thing about the idea of playing him is he'd be playing next to a center in Brunskill who's been experienced in the system that would still give you an opportunity if you don't play Aaron Brewer because you're not starting the ones, it's not like Jonah's got to sort out calls with guys that don't know the system like Addison West, right? And that's no shade to Addison West, but an undrafted free agent in Addison West versus Daniel Brunskill, who's played in this system for years and probably knows it like the back of his hand, can help you get the right calls based on the front and the defensive tackles alignment and what kind of combination blocks you're running based off of whether they're bumping the second level with motion, or if everybody's static, or if we get a 2-eye, or is he a 3 technique, or is he head up? All those little details. I think Jonah, out of all of the guys that we've talked about, Jonah's the one who is a projected starter that would benefit the most based on how up and down it was against Chicago, in my opinion. So Kenneth Grant, I could take it or leave it. If you tell me he plays, great. If you tell me, hey, we're not this week, great. Jonah, I actively want to play. Jordan Phillips, I expect to play. This is all, of course, health willing. Guys have minor bumps or bruises or dings out of practice, whatever. Maybe you don't see a guy here or a guy there. Jason Marshall, dial him up. And I want him playing with better guys around him. That's one I really want to get a feel for. We didn't mention Dante Trader with the safeties, but big opportunity for him, where obviously you have Elijah Campbell got banged up against Chicago. Ashton Davis is out for the foreseeable future. I think if you have Ifitu Melifonwu should probably play. I would not play Minkah Fitzpatrick, but then it's McMorrison, Trader, and John Saunders, and Trader's got a big leap-up opportunity. We didn't get any film against Chicago. And then Zeke Biggers I would play, Quinn Ewers I would play, and Ollie Gordon I would play. And I want to see those guys kind of maybe with some opportunities with better talent around them, as we've discussed. That's going to do it for us here today on the show. It's Friday afternoon. Game is tomorrow, less than 24 hours away from kick. You guys can keep it locked in right here on Locked On Dolphins. I'll be with you after the game, kind of talk about what we saw, and I hope to see you then. Go Fins.